What happens when a Hollywood icon sits down expecting a lighthearted chat about his latest project, only to find himself cornered by one of television's most notorious interviewers? That's exactly what unfolded between Don Johnson and Joy Behar, a clash that turned a routine daytime segment into one of the most explosive moments in The View's history. What began as a simple promotional interview spiraled into a verbal showdown so tense it left the studio in stunned silence, and ended in one of daytime TV's most dramatic walk-dash-offs. Don Johnson walked onto the set with his trademark swagger, flashing the million-dollar smile that made him a household name. The audience roared as he slid into his seat, clearly expecting the usual softball questions about his new film. "Welcome back to The View. Everyone knows you from Miami Vice and Nash Bridges." Joy began warmly, but then her tone shifted, subtle, sharp, the kind regular viewers knew too well. "Today, I want to talk about something else entirely." Johnson's smile faltered. "Well, I was hoping we could discuss the movie. I think your audience will love it." "Oh, we'll get to that," Joy said, leaning in. "But first let's talk about your recent comments on method acting. You said today's actors are too soft to handle real drama." The other co-hosts glanced at each other. This wasn't going to be the usual celebrity chat. Johnson's jaw tightened. "I think you may be taking that out of context. What I've always said is acting requires toughness, a willingness to go to uncomfortable places. But you specifically said actors today lack the grit your generation had." Joy pressed, her voice turning prosecutorial. "Isn't that presumptuous, considering you haven't worked with every actor in Hollywood?" "Joy, with all due respect, you're twisting my words," Johnson replied, his composure thinning. "I was talking about the craft, about commitment. That's not what this says." Joy held up a printed article. "Right here you called modern actors pampered and said they lacked the hunger that made your generation great." A flicker of irritation crossed Johnson's face. "I'd like to see the full context of that interview, because first of all, that doesn't sound like me. And second, even if I did voice concerns about how the industry has changed, that's hardly controversial." "Not controversial," Joy shot back. "It's just wrong. Have you seen the performances coming out today? The preparation, the dedication?" "Of course I have," Johnson said, his voice rising. "There's incredible talent today, but there's a difference between raw talent and the resilience it takes to grind it out for years working dinner theater, regional productions before your big break." "So you're saying you had it harder than actors today?" Joy challenged, clearly relishing the rising tension. "I'm saying the path was different," Johnson replied curtly. "We didn't have publicists shielding us. We took the hits and kept going." Joy leaned back with a smirk. "Funny, from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're not handling criticism so well right now." The studio went silent. Johnson's knuckles whitened on the chair. "Excuse me," he said, voice low and dangerous. "Well, here you are, getting defensive over your own words." Joy continued, fanning the flames. "Maybe the problem isn't that today's actors are too soft. Maybe it's that yesterday's actors can't handle being questioned." Johnson's face went still, the kind of stillness before an explosion. "Joy, I came here to talk about my work, to entertain your audience, not to be ambushed." "No one's ambushing you," Joy said sweetly. "I'm just asking you to stand by what you said. Isn't that what interviews are for?" "Interviews are conversations," Johnson snapped, "not interrogations, and certainly not based on quotes ripped out of context." The tension was unbearable. Whoopi Goldberg tried to intervene. "Maybe we should move on to the new project," but Joy cut her off. "No, I think this is important. Don wants to criticize an entire generation of actors, but the moment he's asked to explain, suddenly it's an ambush." Johnson leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper sharper than a shout. "Let me be clear. I've been respectful since I sat down. I've tried to answer honestly. What you're doing is deliberately provocative, chasing ratings. And frankly, it's beneath this show." The words hit like a grenade. Joy's eyes narrowed. "Beneath this show," she repeated, incredulous. "Don, this show has always been about real conversations, not just celebrities delivering rehearsed talking points. Real conversations." Johnson laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call misrepresenting someone's words, then attacking them when they clarify? Where I come from, we call that something else entirely." Sarah N tried to calm things down. "Maybe we can all just take a breath." Joy waved her off. "No, Sarah, I want to hear it." "Don, what do you call it?" Johnson stared at her, the weight of his silence heavy. "Finally, you know exactly what you're doing. Manufacturing controversy. Hoping for a viral clip. And you're willing to trash someone's reputation to get it. Nobody's trashing your reputation but you." Joy fired back. "All I did was quote you. If you don't like your own words, maybe that's the problem." The air in the studio felt like it might shatter. The co-hosts were visibly uneasy now, shifting in their seats. Sarah N leaned forward, voice gentle. "Maybe we can all just take a breath," but Joy cut her off with a dismissive wave, eyes locked on Johnson. "No, Sarah, I want to hear this." "Don, What do you think we should call it? Please enlighten us. Johnson held her gaze, silent for a long beat as he chose his words. Then, steady and deliberate. I think you know exactly what you're doing. Joy, you're manufacturing a move and trying to stir up controversy for social media, and you don't care if you have to trash someone's reputation to do it. Trash your reputation, Joy shot back. Nobody's doing that but you, right here, right now. All I did was quote your own words. No, Johnson said, his voice tightening. What you did was twist a thoughtful conversation about how the industry has changed into some kind of generational attack. And when I tried to clarify, you doubled down and made it personal. Joy leaned across the table, eyes flashing. You know what's personal, Don? Coming on national television and insulting an entire generation of hardworking actors. That's personal to every young performer fighting to make it. I never insulted anyone. Johnson snapped, his Hollywood polish finally cracking. I was talking about systemic changes about how actors are developed, supported, and trained. But you've decided I'm the villain in some narrative you've already written. The only narrative I care about is the truth. Joy fired back. And the truth is, you came here expecting everyone to kiss your ring and tell you how wonderful you are. You can't handle it when someone actually challenges you. Johnson's face flushed red. Challenge me, Joy. I've been challenged by directors, critics, and audiences for 40 years. What you're doing isn't a challenge, it's ambush journalism dressed up as daytime television. Oh, please. Joy scoffed. This isn't journalism. It's a talk show. We talk, we disagree. If you can't handle that, maybe stick to scripted fluff with entertainment tonight. The jab landed hard. Johnson's hands trembled on the table, his anger barely contained. You know what, Joy? You're right about one thing. I did expect professionalism. I expected the same respect I've shown every host, every interviewer, every fan I've ever met. And you've gotten respect, Joy insisted, cutting him off. I asked you fair questions about your own statements. Fair. Johnson's voice rose, sharp and dangerous. You ambushed me with cherry-picked quotes you refused to show in context. You've been combative and dismissive since the second I sat down. If this is your idea of respect, I'd hate to see how you treat your enemies. Okay, everyone, let's calm down, Whoopi urged, trying again to ease the tension. But Johnson shook his head. No, Whoopi. Joy clearly has something she wants to get off her chest. So let's hear it. What's this really about? Joy, what did I do to earn this kind of hostility? Joy's smile vanished. The mask dropped. You want to know? Fine. This is about entitlement. It's about aging actors who think they can sneer at the next generation, then hide behind their legacy when someone calls them out. Johnson nodded slowly, his voice low. There it is. This was never about a quote in Variety. This is about you deciding I represent something you don't like and using this platform to take me down a peg. Nobody's trying to take you down, Don, Joy said quickly, though her tone betrayed her. I'm holding you accountable for your words. My words, Johnson pressed, which you still haven't shown in full context. For all I know, you've pulled one line from a 20-minute interview and built this whole ambush around it at last. Joy snatched up the printed article and read aloud. Here it is. In Variety, you said, the actors coming up today have incredible talent. But I sometimes wonder if they have the same hunger and resilience my generation developed through years of rejection and struggle. The industry coddles performers now, in ways that may not ultimately serve their growth as artists. Johnson blinked, genuinely stunned. That's it. That's the line. That's what this entire attack has been built on. You're criticizing an entire generation, Joy insisted. I'm making an observation about how the system has changed. Johnson corrected, his voice regaining steel. And if you read that quote honestly, it's nowhere near the takedown you've been pretending it is. It's condescending and dismissive, Joy fired back. Johnson rose slowly from his chair, the weight of his decision written all over his face. You want to know what's truly condescending and dismissive? Joy, inviting someone on your show under false pretenses, ambushing them with a made-up controversy, and then doubling down when they try to have a real conversation. The studio froze. Every camera zoomed in on Johnson as he looked down at Joy with a mix of disgust and disappointment. I came here to promote a film I'm proud of, to talk with people I respected, but what I've realized is that at least one person at this table is more interested in manufacturing drama than in meaningful dialogue. Joy opened her mouth, but Johnson raised his hand, cutting her off. No. I'm speaking now. For 40 years I've done interviews, tough ones, hostile ones. I've been grilled, challenged, even cornered, but I've never sat across from someone so intent on twisting my words, so unwilling to extend even basic courtesy, all in the name of scoring points. The tension thickened, pressing down on everyone in the room. Johnson glanced around at the other co-hosts, their expressions split between sympathy and shock. His voice dropped, carrying genuine disappointment. The saddest part, I used to respect this show. I thought it was about intelligent women having thoughtful conversations. What I see today is just another example of media turning dialogue into combat for entertainment. Joy's face paled, but her stubbornness held. Don, you're overreacting. This is exactly the kind of conversation this show was built for. Discussion. Johnson arched an eyebrow. Discussion. Joy, you weren't interested in discussion from the second I sat down. You wanted confrontation. There's a difference. And the fact that you don't recognize it tells me everything about your intentions. Sunny finally broke her silence. Don, maybe we can reset. Talk about the movie you came here to share. He turned to her with a sad smile. Sunny, I appreciate that. But we're past that point. Joy's made it clear she's more interested in prosecuting me for a crime I didn't commit than talking about my work. What crime? Joy snapped, her voice rising. Having an opinion. Making observations about your industry. Johnson's voice dropped into that dangerous quiet. The crime of being honest about the struggles young actors face. Apparently, saying the industry has changed, and not always for the better, makes me the enemy of progress. Joy shot up from her chair, matching his stance. Honest, let's be honest. You're upset because someone finally called you out for your outdated old-school attitudes. Out of touch. Johnson repeated, a bitter laugh escaping. Joy, I've worked with actors from every generation. I've mentored young performers, learned from them, celebrated their growth, but apparently suggesting that rejection and struggle might strengthen an artist makes me some relic who needs to be put in his place. If the shoe fits, Joy muttered under her breath, just loud enough for the microphones. The words hit Johnson like a blow. His composure cracked, civility gone. There it is. Finally, the truth from Joy Behar. This was never about my words. This was about you tearing me down because I represent something you despise. Dawn, please, Whoopi interjected. Desperate, let's take a breath. But Johnson shook his head. No, Whoopi, your audience deserves to see what happens when a guest refuses to play along with Joy's agenda. How a simple interview becomes a public execution because one host decides to make it personal. Joy flushed with anger. Public execution. All I did was ask you to explain your words. No, Johnson corrected sharply. You asked me to defend myself against charges you invented. When I gave context, you called me defensive. When I clarified, you accused me of making excuses. There was no winning with you, Joy, because winning was never the point. Destroying me was. The studio was suffocatingly silent. Cameras zoomed in on faces, capturing every twitch and glance of this unraveling moment. Nobody's trying to destroy you, Joy said, but her voice faltered. Really? Johnson pulled out his phone. Because I can already see the headlines. Don Johnson loses his cool on The View. Don Johnson can't handle tough questions. Don Johnson shows his true colors. That's what this was designed for, wasn't it? Joy opened her mouth, but no words came out. For the first time, she looked speechless. Johnson's gaze swept the table, lingering on each co-host. Ladies, I apologize to those of you who expected a real conversation. I'm sorry Joy's need for a viral moment stole that from us. Don, don't leave, Sarah pleaded softly. We can still fix this. Johnson shook his head. Some things can't be fixed, Sarah. Some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. Joy made it personal. And I won't pretend that's acceptable. He began unhooking his microphone, each movement deliberate. I've been in this business long enough to know when the most dignified choice is to walk away, and I've reached that point. Joy's voice finally returned, sharp and desperate. So you're just going to run. Doesn't that prove my point that your generation can't handle criticism? Johnson froze mid-motion, microphone in hand. Slowly, he turned back, his expression so cold, several audience members audibly gasped. Joy, let me leave you with one thought. The difference between criticism and cruelty is intent. Criticism helps someone grow. What you did here wasn't about growth. It was about feeding your ego at my expense. He set the microphone gently on the table. And for the record, I'm not running from anything. I'm walking away from a level of disrespect I wouldn't tolerate from anyone, no matter what show they host. Joy stood frozen as Johnson straightened his jacket, then fixed his eyes on the main camera. For anyone watching, don't take anyone's word for what happened here, not even mine. Look up the full context before you believe a headline or a soundbite designed to stir outrage. Make up your own mind. He turned back to the other co-hosts, his tone softening. Ladies, thank you for your time. I hope your show finds its way back to the thoughtful conversations it used to represent. With that, Don Johnson walked toward the exit. The studio remained stunned. The moment already cemented as one of the most unforgettable walkouts in daytime television. The doors closed behind him with a finality that echoed through the room. Asterisk, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The cameras kept rolling, documenting what would soon become one of the most replayed moments in television history. Joy Behar stood, frozen, her mouth slightly open, staring at the doors Don Johnson had just walked through. The sharp, combative host, who only minutes earlier had commanded the table, now looked rattled, genuinely shaken by what had just unfolded. Whoopi Goldberg was the first to break the silence. her voice a hushed murmur. Well, that just happened. The audience stirred, a low wave of whispers cutting through the tension. Sarah looked helplessly around the table, clearly uncertain how to continue. Sunny lowered her gaze to her notes, shaking her head slowly. We need to cut to commercial. Someone called from off camera. No, Whoopi said firmly, raising a hand. Not yet. We need to address what just happened. Joy finally found. Her voice, though it trembled with defensiveness, he completely overreacted. I was doing my job asking tough questions, the kind our audience expects. Joy, Whoopi said carefully, I think we all need to really think about what Justin went down. But Joy bristled. What went down is that Don Johnson couldn't handle being challenged. He proved exactly what I said. His generation doesn't know how to take criticism. Sarah frowned. Joy, from where I sat, it didn't look like that. It felt like you were trying to create a moment, not have a conversation. Her words hit Joy like a splash of ice water. That's not true. I was doing what this show has always done, holding people accountable. By mischaracterizing his words, Sunny cut in, her voice quiet but firm. I read that same interview. His comments were thoughtful, nuanced. What you presented was a caricature designed to provoke. Joy flushed, this time with embarrassment. I quoted him directly. You stripped those words of their context, Whoopi replied gently but firmly, and when he tried to explain, you escalated instead of listening. The audience had fallen into complete silence, aware they were witnessing something unprecedented, the view unraveling on live television. Look, Joy said, her voice softening to something almost pleading. Maybe I came on strong, but that's what people expect from me. From this show, we're supposed to ask hard questions. There's a difference, Sarah countered, between asking hard questions and conducting a hostile interrogation. What just happened crossed that line. For the first time, Joy realized she was isolated. Her eyes darted between her co-hosts, searching for support that wasn't there. So what, you're all against me now? There are no sides, Joy, Whoopi said calmly. There's only what happened, and what happened is that a guest came here expecting professionalism and instead got ambushed. He called me unprofessional, Joy protested. And maybe, Sunny said softly, he had a point. The words landed like a bomb. Joy blinked at her colleague, stunned. Sunny, you can't be serious. I am, Sunny replied, locking eyes with her. Joy, I've watched you for years. You can be incisive, sharp, challenging, but fair. What happened today wasn't your best work. It wasn't fairness. It was cruelty, disguised as accountability. The cameras caught Joy's face as her facade began to crumble. The unflinching combatant was gone, replaced by someone grappling with the weight of her choices.